Reef DVMs here. Want to show you a recipe that we got that uses some of our homegrown walnuts. My daughter Anna here is sifting through a tray of cracked walnuts. You may remember we put out a video on the Hunt's Nutcracker, which we still really like to this day. And my daughter here just sifts through the broken pieces and picks out the walnuts for me. And then I basically jar them up and I find recipes that use walnuts. In the process of someone looking at our video, they sent us this great recipe, and that person be Mark, so here's a special shout out to you, Mark. It's a good recipe. It's basically a pizza with walnuts and a bunch of cheese, and I like it a lot. It's a good recipe. So here we are filling up the walnut jar, because we're certainly going to need that, and then I'll go through all the other ingredients that you're going to need. And here's the list of ingredients you're going to need. You're going to need some yeast if you want to make your own pie crust. I like some chives. Of course, you're going to need salt and oil, canola oil here. Some flour. You're going to need some pears. 2 probably enough, but I like lots. Some gorgonzola cheese. The fine chopped walnuts that we just did. Some provolone cheese and some water. Of course, the bread machine makes it a lot easier. You can certainly make your own pizza crust by hand, or you can use pizza crust in a tube. But we like to make our own. So here we go. We're going to take some water. Put it in the bread maker. In this case, we're going to do about a cup and a half or so. Every bread maker is a little different. Most bread makers come with a recipe for pizza crust, so certainly you can follow that too. We're going to put some oil in it. In this case, we're going to just use a tablespoon measure here, and we're going to get a couple tablespoons in there. 3, I think, to be exact. And then we want to add some flour. In this case, we're using bread flour. You certainly can use regular flour too, or sifted flour. We find this recipe does real well with our bread machine flour, so that's good. We're going to get 4 cups of flour in. Nice thing about these bread machines, they're kind of like on autopilot when they make dough for you, which is great. I really kind of like them. And then once you get that flour in, we're going to make a small depression in the center where the yeast is going to go. And then we're also going to put our salt in. In this case, we're going to do about a teaspoon. And then we're going to put our yeast in. Now make sure with your yeast that it's room temperature if you really want it to work well. I know a lot of us keep it in the fridge for longevity's sake. But if you let it warm up for, half hour to an hour, does much better in the bread machines. So we get the yeast in it there, and then we're just going to shut the lid. We're going to set it for dough, and it's going to run for a couple hours, and when we're going to take it out, our dough will be ready. In this case, we've made a full batch, which is 2 crusts for us. Certainly, again, follow the recipe on your bread machine. It's probably the easiest. But for the sake of this recipe, we show that we made the crust too. While the crust is working in the bread machine, I like my walnuts kind of finely chopped. Some people don't. Some people like them larger on the pizza. Mark, the gentleman who showed us this recipe, he actually likes to basically take like a maple syrup and kind of caramelize the walnuts to make them stick to the pizza more. That's perfectly fine to do too. I'm sure there's all sorts of variations of this recipe. But at least for what I'm doing here, I'm just going to chop them up. I love the flavor of fresh walnuts. These being black walnuts, they have a really nice, deep, strong flavor, which really goes well with the pears. And the amount of pears you use, I guess that's debatable too. I've seen the recipe now online a couple different ways. Some people only use 1 pear, some people use 2, some people use 4. I guess it really depends what you want to do. In my situation here, I'm going to use several pears, and I'm just going to make sure I've got enough pear to layer the whole entire pizza with pear, because I like it. The type of pear you use, I guess that also, can depend upon what you like. So I'm not going to pick on what pears we use. I know our pears here are pretty ripe. Some people like them a little more firm. I guess really that's just preference. So anyways, we're going to chop up the pears here into slices so that we can put them on the pizza. I'm just going to cut the ends off here. And I'm going to slice the pear into thin slices so it goes onto the pizza easier. I'm sure you could dice it and cube it too, but this is the way I tried to make this recipe. And once you got the pears and you've got the walnuts, certainly you've got the cheese here, the gorgonzola, you got the provolone. The provolone cheese I really like, but again I like to slice it up. Some people like to shred this. I just find it's a very soft cheese, and the soft cheeses don't always spread real well for me in the shredder. So in this case, I'm just going to slice it up into little squares so I can lay it on the pizza and just let it melt in. But again, personal preference. If you want, run it through a shredder, run it through a hand shredder, whatever works for you. I'm going to take the whole package of provolone cheese and chop it up. I think in this recipe, the provolone cheese package here we had was about 8 ounces. I think the gorgonzola was about 4 ounces of cheese. So we got the dough here. We're just going to manipulate it free here from the bread machine and kind of break it into 2 halves if we can. It's a little bit sticky at this point. That's kind of what I like. Our pan is well coated with oil, so we got a cooking spray on it so our pizza pan won't adhere to it too much. I'm just going to break it into basically 2 pieces. As you can see, it's kind of real doughy texture to it. So we're just going to tear it off here, and we're going to put one of them over on the pizza pan. It's kind of funny, it sticks to your hands. And we're just going to take it and knee it out. Certainly you can use a rolling pin if you wanted to, but for us, our hands work fine. A lot of people in the restaurant biz are probably good at throwing pizza dough. I'm not so much. Farm kid here. My wife and I are not good at doing that kind of stuff. But just a nice homemade pizza crust. Very easy to stretch out. Again, if you want it thicker, certainly can do that. This crust will probably bake up to be about 3/4 of an inch thick. You also can make it thinner too by stretching it out more and adding more water and oil to the batch when you make it. So the first thing we're going to lay down is the provolone cheese. And again, semi-circle it around. Again, if you shred it, you just layer it on here, but in our case it's sliced. So we're just going to try and cover all the area up so that the cheese can just melt into the pizza. And again, these are pretty thin slices, so it won't take long for this cheese to melt. Again, also being a soft cheese. Put all this cheese on. And then it's basically kind of a layering effect as to how you make the pizza. In my case, I like to keep the walnuts on top. Yes, I know that means they can knock off a little easier when you cut it. Some people like to embed them in the layers of cheese. I don't. I like them on top for that nice flavor right off the bat when you bite into the pizza. So the provolone cheese is on. So the next step for us is to get the pears on there. The pears are again sliced. And then you're just going to kind of layer them out. You don't have to put this much pear on. You certainly can put less. But again, I like a lot of pear, so we're just going to throw it on. For this particular pizza, we cut up at least 2 pears. Might even been 3. And then, of course, after the pears are on, we'll get that gorgonzola cheese on. And I like a hefty amount. I know it's a little bit of a strong cheese. It's really what gives it that deep, rich flavor to kind of offset those strong walnuts, especially if you're using homegrown black walnuts. So we're going to put the whole 4 ounces on the pizza here. And then we're going to top dress it with the walnuts. It's basically that simple. Very easy recipe to make. Of course I say that, but we're using a bread machine too, right, for the dough. Again, you could also use the pizza dough in a tube or a roll. You could even buy pre-made pizza dough or pizza crust, and that might work for you too. So on go the walnuts. Put them on as heavy as you like, folks. In my case, I like them heavy, so we put a lot on. And then if you want to top dress it, you're probably going to want to top dress it with either onion or a chive. We like chives. So a little bit of green chives on the top. And then basically, this pizza is going to be ready to be baked. Now depending upon your crust, it kind of depends upon how long you want to bake this pizza. In our case, we've got a little bit thicker crust. It's a homemade crust. And we know that it takes a good 15 minutes at about 400 degrees. Sometimes you do 425, but in this case I don't want to burn that cheese, so we're going to go with that 400 degrees for a good 15 minutes. Get all the cheese to melt in, and then that'll help stick those walnuts down, and it'll give it that nice rich deep flavor that we like. So next, we got the oven preheated. It's time to put it in. So we got it at 400 degrees. We're going to do about 15 minutes on the timer. And then we're going to have a wonderful Gorgonzola provolone walnut pizza to eat. Oh, I can smell this. I hope you guys enjoy this recipe. I highly recommend it. It's a great way to use homemade walnuts. There it is, just a beautiful pizza. Appreciate if you'd like to see more recipes like this, if you'd like, or subscribe to our channel. We also put out some great videos about reef aquarium stuff that we really enjoy, and of course the farm country lifestyle that we like. But this is a great pizza for the family, a great way to use those walnuts that you have, and a wonderful pizza to share with friends and relatives because of its rich, deep flavor.